The raid had been a bust. 4 months of surveillance, countless hours of paperwork, and enough overtime to make Elena worry about his health, all for nothing. The warehouse in East LA stood empty except for scattered packing materials and the lingering smell of industrial cleaner. Someone had tipped them off. DEA agent Miguel Mike Ramirez sat in his unmarked Crown Victoria, loosening his tactical vest. 15 years on the job, and the failed operations still stung. He radioed dispatch to confirm the negative result, then decided to head home early. No point in dwelling on another dead end. The drive from downtown to their Woodland Hills home usually took 40 minutes, but mid-afternoon traffic was light. Mike pulled into their cul-de-sac at 2:47 p.m., a good 4 hours before Elena expected him. Her silver Camry sat in the garage, odd, since she'd mentioned having lunch with her sister in Pasadena. Mike grabbed his gear bag and headed inside, already composing an apology for the string of late nights. Maybe they could catch an early dinner, try that new Italian place Elena had been eyeing. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Mike's training kicked in, that subtle awareness that something was off. A glass of water on the kitchen counter, condensation still fresh. Elena's purse on the entry table, her workout clothes trailing up the stairs like breadcrumbs. Then he heard it. A laugh, Elena's distinctive giggle that had charmed him 12 years ago at his cousin's wedding. But there was something different about it now. Something intimate. Something that made his stomach clench. Mike set down his bag silently, his hand instinctively moving toward his service weapon before catching himself. This wasn't a raid. This was his home, his wife. Each step up the carpeted stairs was deliberate, avoiding the creaky spot on the 7th step. The master bedroom door was ajar. Through the gap, he could see movement, hear voices. "You should go!" Elena's voice breathless. "He won't be home for hours, but..." "Relax, babe." A male voice, confident, dismissive. "You said he's always home after 7 on raid days. We've got time." Mike recognized the voice. Jake Morrison, Elena's personal trainer from Equinox. The guy with the artificially whitened smile and the Dodge Charger he was always detailing in the gym parking lot. "I just worry sometimes," Elena continued. "Mike's not stupid. He's a federal agent, for God's sake." Jake's laugh was sharp, mocking. "That federal agent is too busy playing cops and robbers to notice what's happening in his own bedroom. Stupid cop probably thinks you're actually doing Pilates 3 times a week." Elena giggled again. "Don't be mean. He's just dedicated to his job. Too noble for his own good, right? That's what you always say. The Boy Scout with a badge who thinks the world runs on honor and justice." Mike stepped back from the door, his mind racing. Every instinct screamed at him to kick down the door, to confront them. But something held him back. Maybe it was the 15 years of undercover work that taught him patience. Maybe it was the calculating part of his mind that had kept him alive in rooms full of cartel soldiers. Or maybe it was the realization that bursting in would give them the easy out. A quick divorce, some embarrassment, and they'd both move on with their lives. No. Mike Ramirez was a patient man, a methodical man, and right now, he was a man who needed to think. He descended the stairs as silently as he'd climbed them, grabbed his gear bag, and slipped out the front door. He sat in his car for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles went white. Then he drove to the end of the block, where he had a clear view of the house. 23 minutes later, Jake Morrison emerged, adjusting his fitted athletic shirt and running a hand through his hair. He looked both ways, the casual surveillance of a man who thought he was being clever, then jogged to his Charger parked 2 blocks away. Mike noted the license plate, though he already had it memorized. He waited another 10 minutes before pulling out his personal phone and sending Elena a text. "Raid went longer than expected. Be home late. Love you." Her response came quickly. "No problem, honey. At Carmen's for lunch. Might do some shopping after. See you tonight?" The heart emoji felt like a knife between his ribs. Chapter 2. Intelligence Gathering. The next 3 weeks were an exercise in compartmentalization. Mike went to work, conducted his investigations, filed his reports. At home, he was the same dedicated husband, perhaps even more attentive than usual. Elena seemed to relax, mistaking his careful observation for renewed interest in their marriage. But while Mike played the devoted husband, he was building a different kind of case. The security system installation was easy to justify. "There's been some break-ins in the neighborhood," he told Elena over breakfast. "I want to make sure you're safe when I'm working late." Elena had kissed his cheek. "You worry too much, honey. But if it makes you feel better..." The cameras were state-of-the-art, the same model the DEA used for safe house surveillance. Motion-activated, night vision capable, with feeds that uploaded to a secure cloud server. Mike positioned them carefully, covering all entrances, the driveway, and yes, the hallway leading to their bedroom. He established patterns. Elena's nursing shifts at Valley Presbyterian ran Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. Her pilate sessions were Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, with occasional Saturday morning yoga workshops. Jake's Charger appeared in the neighborhood security footage like clockwork. Tuesdays at 3:47 p.m., Thursdays at 4:12 p.m. He'd grown comfortable, sometimes parking just a block away instead of his original 2-block distance. Mike watched the footage in his office during lunch breaks, cataloging every visit. Jake's arrogance was stunning. He'd stopped to check his reflection in car windows. Once he actually waved at old Mrs. Chen next door, bold as brass. The bedroom camera, positioned to cover the hallway approach, captured their conversations as they passed. Mike forced himself to listen, building a profile. "I've got a new supplement hookup in TJ," Jake mentioned one Thursday. "Pure stuff, not the stepped-on garbage they sell at GNC." "Be careful," Elena had replied. "Mike mentioned they're cracking down on steroid trafficking." "Your husband talks too much about work. Besides, I'm too smart to get caught. Been doing this for 3 years, babe. I know every border guard's shift pattern." Mike made a note. Tijuana runs. Steroid trafficking. 3 years of operation. The financial investigation was where Mike's DEA training really shone. Public records showed Jake Morrison's official income, $65,000 annually from Equinox, maybe another $20,000 in private training sessions. Yet he drove a $50,000 car, wore a $5,000 watch, and lived in a $2, 500-month apartment in Sherman Oaks. Instagram provided a goldmine. Jake's account was a monument to vanity. Workout videos, client testimonials, and countless shots of Jake flashing cash, wearing designer clothes, and partying in Vegas and Cabo. One photo caught Mike's attention. Jake on a beach in Tijuana, his left shoulder prominently displayed. The tattoo was intricate, a black scorpion with its tail curved over its back. Mike had seen similar designs before, usually on low-level cartel associates trying to project toughness. He dug deeper. Jake's travel patterns were predictable. Tijuana every 2 to 3 weeks, always driving, always alone. Border crossing records showed he usually returned late at night. His car often flagged for secondary inspection, but never searched thoroughly. Credit card records, obtained through a favor from a friend in financial crimes, showed large cash deposits following each Mexico trip. Never enough to trigger federal reporting requirements, but consistent. Jake was smart enough to structure his deposits, keeping them under $10,000. Mike cross-referenced the deposits with his DEA database. The timing aligned suspiciously with known steroid shipment routes from Tijuana. Jake wasn't just a user, he was a dealer, supplying gym rats across the valley with Mexican pharmaceutical gear. But steroids were small time. Mike needed something bigger. Chapter 3. The Opportunity. The briefing came on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after Mike had installed the cameras. Assistant Special Agent in charge. David Brennan addressed the room with his usual no-nonsense demeanor. "Sinaloa lost a major shipment last week," Brennan announced, clicking through surveillance photos. $2 million in cash, headed south from a stash house in Sylmar. The courier never made it to the drop point. Mike leaned forward with the rest of the team. Cartel money gone missing usually meant bodies would start dropping. Intel suggests an inside job, Brennan continued. Someone with knowledge of the route and timing. The Sinaloa leadership is furious. They've put out feelers, looking for anyone flashing unexplained wealth in the last week. The room buzzed with speculation. Mike's mind, however, was elsewhere. An idea was forming. Dangerous, complex, but poetically perfect. After the briefing, Mike approached his partner, Ray Espinoza. "What do you think happened to the money?" Ray shrugged. "Could be anyone. Courier got greedy. Rival gang intercepted it. Hell, maybe one of their own girlfriends got tired of waiting for crumbs." "They'll tear LA apart looking for it," Mike observed. "Yeah, well, that's their problem. Though I feel sorry for whatever idiot they decide to blame. Sinaloa doesn't do trials." Mike nodded thoughtfully. No, they didn't do trials, but they did do disappearances. That afternoon, Mike watched Jake arrive at his house at 3:47 p.m., prompt as always. The arrogant swagger, the casual entitlement as he walked into another man's home. Mike opened his laptop and began crafting a narrative. Digital forensics was an art form, and Mike had learned from the best. Creating a believable evidence trail required patience and attention to detail. Bank records could be altered if you knew the right systems. Surveillance footage could be doctored if you had the right software. Phone records could be fabricated if you understood the carrier protocols. Over the next week, Mike built Jake Morrison's alternate life. A $50,000 cash deposit, split across 3 accounts, dated the day after the cartel shipment disappeared, altered gym security footage showing Jake leaving at unusual hours on the night in question, a purchase history for burner phones from an electronics store in Koreatown, text messages on those burners discussing the package and moving the goods. The scorpion tattoo was a gift. Mike enhanced photos from Jake's Instagram, subtly altering the design to more closely match known Sinaloa imagery. A few strategic posts on cartel monitoring forums, and suddenly Jake Morrison wasn't just a steroid dealer. He was a connected player who'd gotten too ambitious. Chapter 4. Old Debts. Luis El Sombra. Mendoza lived quietly in Boyle Heights, running an auto repair shop that specialized in classic cars. To his neighbors, he was just another reformed gangster trying to go straight. To Mike, he was living proof that sometimes the system worked. 8 years ago, Mike had arrested Luis during a joint task force operation. Luis had been middle management for the Sinaloa cartel, running drug distribution through East LA. But unlike most cartel soldiers, Luis had been looking for an exit. His daughter had been born with cerebral palsy, and he wanted out of the life. The arrest should have been Luis's death sentence. Cartel leadership assumed he'd flip, become an informant. They'd already sent 2 hit teams to the county jail. But Mike had made a calculated decision. He'd arranged for Luis to be held in federal custody, away from the cartel's reach. When Luis refused to testify, maintaining his twisted sense of honor, Mike had ensured he got a fair sentence and protection inside. Luis had served 5 years, gotten out, and gone straight. His brothers, however, were a different story. Mike found Luis under the hood of a 1967 Chevelle, mariachi music playing from ancient speakers. The shop was closed, but Luis had always worked late. "Miguel," Luis said without looking up. He'd recognized Mike's footsteps. Old habits. "Been a while." "Luis, how's Maria?" "Getting stronger every day. Therapy's expensive, but it's working." Luis finally emerged, wiping his hands on a rag. His face was harder than Mike remembered, prison lean but healthy. "You didn't come here to ask about my daughter." Mike had rehearsed this conversation a dozen times. "I need a favor." Luis's expression didn't change. "I'm out of that life, hermano. You know this." "I'm not asking you to get back in. I'm asking you to make a call." They sat in Luis's office, sharing a bottle of tequila. Mike laid out the basics. No mention of Elena, just a problem that needed solving. A man who'd stolen from the cartel and needed to disappear. Why do you care what happens to some thief? Luis asked. I don't want him dead. Just gone. Somewhere he can think about his choices. Luis studied Mike's face. They'd known each other too long for complete deception. This is personal. Yes. And you can't handle it legally. No. Luis was quiet for a long moment. My brothers still work for Sinaloa. They run work camps in Guatemala, marijuana farms. Hard labor, but survivable if you keep your head down. That would work. The thief. He really steal from them? Mike met Luis's eyes. The evidence says he did. Luis nodded slowly. He understood the careful phrasing. It would have to look real. My brothers, they don't play games. And if Sinaloa ever found out the truth, they won't. I've made sure of that. You've changed, Miguel. The cop I knew 8 years ago wouldn't have come here. Mike stood to leave. 8 years ago, I believed the system worked for everyone. Luis made the call that night. His brothers, Hector and Carlos, were interested. A thief who'd stolen $2 million from their employers? They'd been looking for him anyway. Luis provided them with Jake Morrison's details, the evidence Mike had crafted, and most importantly, Jake's schedule. Thursday night, Luis told Mike in a follow-up call. Your problem will be handled Thursday night. Chapter 5. The stage is set. Thursday arrived with the kind of perfect Southern California weather that made people forget the darkness lurking beneath the sunshine. Mike left for work early, kissing Elena goodbye as she sipped her coffee. Late night again? She asked, and was there guilt in her eyes, or was Mike imagining it? Mandatory tactical training, Mike replied. New DEA protocols. I probably won't be home until morning. Be careful, Elena said, and for a moment she seemed genuinely concerned. Mike wondered if she ever thought about what they used to have, before Jake Morrison's white smile had turned her head. At work, Mike went through the motions. He'd actually scheduled himself for the overnight training. Details mattered in operations like this. His alibi would be airtight, confirmed by a dozen other agents. Throughout the day, he monitored his home security system via his phone. Elena left for her hospital shift at 6:45 a.m. She returned at 3:30 p.m., showered, changed into yoga pants and a sports bra. At 3:47 p.m., Jake's Charger pulled into the neighborhood. Mike forced himself to focus on the training scenarios. Urban breach techniques, hostage situations. Ironically appropriate considering what would unfold that night. At 11 p.m., during a break, Mike checked his phone. Jake's car was still parked a block from his house. The bedroom lights were off. He sent Elena a text. Training going well, tired but good, love you. She replied 20 minutes later. Get some rest when you can. See you in the morning. Chapter 6. The Execution. At 2:07 a.m., Jake Morrison emerged from the Ramirez house. Mike watched on his phone as Jake strutted down the walkway, spinning his keys on his finger. The trainer wore jeans and a tight black t-shirt, his hair still styled despite the late hour. Jake had made it halfway to his car when the black Suburban appeared. It rolled up silent, lights off, a shadow against shadows. 3 men emerged with practiced efficiency. They wore dark clothing, faces obscured by baseball caps and bandanas. But their movements were professional, coordinated. Cartel soldiers. Jake saw them at the last second. He tried to run, but they'd positioned themselves perfectly. One man cut off his escape route while the other 2 closed in. Jake Morrison? The lead man spoke accented English. What? No, Jake's denial was cut short as they grabbed him. You steal from us, pendejo? You think we wouldn't find you? I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't steal anything. One of the men held up a phone, showing Jake a photo, his own Instagram post flashing cash. $2 million, East. You thought you could take our money and we'd forget. Jake's eyes went wide with genuine terror. That's not... I didn't. That's from my business. What business? Training housewives? The man backhanded Jake, sending him to his knees. We know about your trips to Tijuana. We know about the money. El Jefe wants to talk to you. They zip-tied Jake's hands, pulled a black hood over his head. Jake was sobbing now, begging. Please, this is a mistake. I sell steroids, okay? Just steroids. I never touched your money. Save it for El Jefe. As they dragged Jake to the Suburban, one of the men looked directly at Mike's security camera. He made a slow, deliberate throat-cutting gesture, then climbed into the vehicle. The Suburban disappeared into the night, leaving only silence and Jake's abandoned car keys glittering on the asphalt. Chapter 7. The morning after Mike arrived home at 6:45 a.m., exhausted from the overnight training but wired with adrenaline, Elena's car was in the garage, but the house felt different. Charged with an electricity that had nothing to do with the Santa Ana winds. He found Elena in the kitchen, standing at the window that overlooked the street. She was still in her robe, clutching a cup of coffee that had gone cold. Her face was pale, eyes red-rimmed. Honey? Mike set down his gear bag, putting concern into his voice. What's wrong? Elena turned to him, and her expression was pure terror. Mike, something happened last night. Something terrible. What do you mean? Are you okay? Did someone... It's Jake, my trainer. He was here last night. Mike's eyebrows rose. Here? Why was your trainer at our house at night? Elena's lie came stuttering out. He said he left some equipment. From our last session. He texted me about it, and I told him where the spare key was. I didn't think... I was asleep, but I heard something outside. Mike moved to the window, looking out at the empty street. What did you hear? Men, speaking Spanish. There was a car, and they took him, Mike. They put something over his head and threw him in a car. Mike's hand went to his service weapon, a reflexive gesture. Did you call 911? No, I was scared. I didn't know what to do. What if they saw me watching? What if they come back? Mike pulled Elena into his arms. She was shaking, and he wondered how much was fear and how much was guilt. It's okay. You're safe. Let me check the security cameras. They sat at the kitchen table as Mike pulled up the footage on his laptop. He watched Elena's face as the scene played out. Jake's abduction in high-definition clarity. Her hand went to her mouth when the Sicario made the throat-cutting gesture. Jesus Christ, Mike muttered. This is cartel stuff. Cartel? Elena's voice cracked. Why would the cartel want Jake? Mike was already pulling up his DEA databases, making a show of investigating. Let me run his name. Holy shit, Elena. Your trainer isn't who you think he is. He showed her the fabricated evidence he'd planted in the system. The financial records, the surveillance photos, the connections to known drug trafficking routes. This can't be real, Elena whispered. Jake's just a personal trainer. Who drives a $50,000 car and wears a Rolex? Elena? I've seen this before. Guys who use legitimate businesses as fronts. The gym was perfect cover. Cash business. Reason to travel. Built-in client base. Elena's phone buzzed. She grabbed it with shaking hands, then gasped. It's from Jake. Mike leaned in, reading over her shoulder. The text was simple. Check your gym bag. Keep your mouth shut. They're watching. My gym bag? Elena stood unsteadily, retrieving her black Nike bag from the hallway closet. With trembling fingers, she unzipped the inner pocket. The burner phone fell out, along with a plastic baggie containing what looked like flash drives. Mike grabbed the phone, handling it carefully with a kitchen towel. Don't touch anything else. This is evidence. He powered on the phone, scrolling through the messages. His own handiwork stared back at them. Texts about shipments, money transfers, threats from anonymous numbers. "Oh God," Elena breathed. "He was using me. Our, our training sessions. He was using them as cover." "Did he ever ask you about my work? About DEA operations?" Elena nodded miserably. "Sometimes. I thought he was just making conversation." "Oh God, Mike, what if they think I was involved?" Mike set the phone down, his face grave. "We need to be very careful here. The cartel doesn't distinguish between guilty and innocent. If they think you knew about the money—" "What money? Mike, what's happening?" He showed her the intelligence briefing about the missing $2 million. Connected the dots. Jake's trips to Tijuana, the timing of his cash deposits, the cartel soldiers who'd taken him. "They think he stole from them," Mike concluded. "And now they have him." Elena broke down completely then, sobbing into her hands. Mike held her, playing the supportive husband, even as he cataloged her reactions. The guilt was eating her alive, but she couldn't confess. Not now. Not with Jake's life hanging in the balance. "What do we do?" she asked finally. "Officially? Nothing. I can't investigate this without explaining why a cartel kidnapping victim was at our house at 2 a.m. Unofficially, we increase security, change our routines, and pray they got what they wanted from Jake." Chapter 8. The Pressure Campaign. The next 3 weeks were a masterclass in psychological warfare. Mike orchestrated every detail while maintaining his facade of protective husband. The strange cars started appearing within days. Black Suburbans with tinted windows would cruise slowly past their house. Sometimes they'd park at the end of the block for an hour, engines running. Mike made sure Elena noticed them. "It's probably nothing," he'd say, even as he checked his weapon. "But maybe you should vary your route to work." The encounters at the grocery store were Luis's idea. His brothers had connections throughout the valley, legitimate businessmen who owed favors, former soldiers trying to go straight. They played their parts perfectly. Elena was shopping at Whole Foods when a man bumped into her near the produce section. He was young, tattooed, with the kind of hard eyes that had seen too much. "Perd en say? Aura," he said, then switched to accented English. "You should be more careful. Accidents happen when people aren't watching where they're going." He held her gaze a beat too long before walking away. Elena called Mike immediately, nearly hyperventilating in the parking lot. He left work to meet her, found her locked in her car, afraid to drive home. "Did you recognize him?" Mike asked, though he knew she didn't. "No, but the way he looked at me." "Mike, they know who I am." The phone calls started the second week. Always from Mexican numbers, always hang-ups when Elena answered. Mike had Ray Espinoza trace them, knowing they'd lead to burner phones purchased in Tijuana. "This is definitely cartel intimidation tactics," Ray confirmed. "Someone's trying to send a message." Mike shared this with Elena, watched her spiral deeper into paranoia. She stopped going to the gym, called in sick to work. She'd sit by the window for hours, watching for strange cars. The note was the crescendo. Mike had agonized over the wording, finally settling on simple menace. "Your boyfriend talked. We know you knew. Keep quiet or join him." He planted it under their doormat while Elena was in the shower, then discovered it when he took out the trash. Elena's scream brought neighbors to their windows. Mike had to physically restrain her from fleeing the house in her bathrobe. "We have to leave," she begged. "Mike, please." "We have to get out of LA." "And go where?" "Elena, these people have networks everywhere. Running makes us look guilty." "I don't care. I can't live like this." That night, she finally broke. Mike found her in their bedroom, laptop open, staring at something on the screen. Her face was gray, eyes hollow. "What is it?" he asked. She turned the laptop toward him. A Facebook profile, clearly fake, created just days ago. The profile picture was Jake, but wrong. Sunburned, thinner, his eyes dead. The location was listed as Retal Julio, Guatemala. There was one status update. Working the fields. They say if I'm good, I'll see home in 5 years. Tell Elena I'm sorry. It could be fake, Mike said carefully. Look at his neck. Elena zoomed in on the photo. There were bruises, the distinctive marks of restraints. That's him. That's really him. He's alive, but he's their slave now. The cartels run work camps down there. Marijuana farms, poppy fields. It's how they punish people who steal from them, but might still be useful. Elena closed the laptop, her decision made. I want to enter witness protection. Chapter 9. The performance. Mike played his part flawlessly. Concerned husband. Protective federal agent. Man caught between duty and family. He arranged a meeting with ASAC Brennan, laid out the situation carefully. His wife's trainer had been kidnapped by the cartel. Evidence suggested the trainer was involved in stealing cartel money. Now Elena was being threatened. Why would they threaten your wife? Brennan asked. Jake Morrison was at our house the night he was taken. He claimed he'd left equipment, but I think he was trying to hide evidence. The cartel must think Elena knew something. Brennan reviewed the security footage, the threatening note, the phone records. This is a mess, Mike. Your wife could be in real danger. I know. That's why I'm requesting witness protection for her. Maybe relocation to... Hold up! We can't just put everyone who gets threatened by the cartel into WITSEC. Has she witnessed any actual crimes? Does she have information about their operations? Mike shook his head. No, she's just collateral damage. Then the best I can do is authorize increased patrols in your neighborhood. Maybe you should take some time off. Stay with her. Mike knew this would be the response. WITSEC was for witnesses, not scared spouses. But he'd needed to make the attempt, needed Elena to see him trying. He returned home to find Elena packing suitcases. We're leaving, she announced. I don't care what your boss says. We're going to my mother's in Portland. Elena, stop. Running won't solve this. Then what will? She rounded on him, eyes blazing with desperation. Tell me, Mike, what's your solution? Wait for them to kidnap me too? Wait for them to... She stopped mid-sentence, something shifting in her expression. Mike watched the realization dawn, the pieces clicking together in her mind. The money was recovered, she said slowly. You mentioned it last week. The cartel money. They found it. Part of it, Mike corrected. They recovered about half from a rival gang safe house. But Jake was already gone by then. He was taken 3 weeks ago. Mike shrugged. Maybe he only stole part of it. Maybe they grabbed him on suspicion. The cartel doesn't need proof, Elena. Suspicion is enough. She studied his face, and for a moment, Mike thought she might voice her suspicions. But then her shoulders sagged, the fight draining out of her. It doesn't matter, she whispered. He's gone. He's in some hellhole in Guatemala because of me. Because of him, Mike corrected firmly. He chose to steal from the cartel. He chose to involve you. None of this is your fault. Elena laughed bitterly. You really believe that? I believe you're a victim in this, and I believe we'll get through it together. She looked at him then with an expression he couldn't quite read. Fear, certainly. Guilt, absolutely. But something else too. A dawning understanding of who her husband really was beneath the badge and the righteous facade. You're not who I thought you were, she said quietly. Mike pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. I'm exactly who you married, Elena. A man who protects what's his, no matter the cost. Chapter 10. The new normal 3 months passed. The strange cars stopped appearing. The phone calls ceased. Even the dread that had permeated their house began to fade, replaced by something more insidious, a quiet resignation. Elena returned to work, but quit the gym. She was jumpy, constantly looking over her shoulder. She'd lost weight, her scrubs hanging loose on her frame. Her coworkers noticed, asked if she was okay. She'd force a smile and blame it on stress. At home, she and Mike moved around each other like ghosts. They ate dinner in silence, slept on opposite sides of the bed, communicated in the polite, empty phrases of strangers. Mike maintained his routine. Work, home, the occasional beer with Ray Espinoza. To outside observers, he was handling the stress remarkably well. Inside, he felt a cold satisfaction every time he saw Elena flinch at unexpected sounds. The second message from Jake came on a Thursday afternoon. Elena was home alone when her phone buzzed with a WhatsApp notification from an unknown number. The video was grainy, clearly shot on a cheap phone. Jake sat on a cot in what looked like a corrugated metal shack. His face was gaunt, beard grown wild. His hands shook as he spoke. Elena, I don't know if you'll get this. They let me use a phone for 5 minutes. Cost me a week's rations. He laughed, a broken sound. I'm on a farm in the mountains. Marijuana. Sunrise to sunset, every day. They say if I meet quota for 5 years, they might let me go. He paused, looking directly at the camera. I know what you're thinking. But it wasn't random, Elena. Think about it. The timing, the evidence. Your husband, he's not what you think. He set me up. I never stole anything. I was just... The video cut off. Elena stared at the blank screen, Jake's words echoing in her mind. She thought about the security cameras Mike had installed just weeks before Jake was taken. The way Mike had been so quick to find evidence of Jake's crimes. The convenient overnight training that had kept him away from home that night. But it was impossible. Mike was a federal agent. A good man. He wouldn't... Would he? Elena pulled up Google, started searching. DEA agent corruption. Cartel connections law enforcement. Frame someone for crime. Each search result felt like another piece of a horrifying puzzle. Stories of agents who'd crossed lines. Officers who'd used their positions for revenge. The thin blue line between justice and vigilantism. She was so absorbed, she didn't hear Mike come home. Researching something. His voice made her jump, slamming the laptop shut. Just medical journals. New procedures at the hospital. Mike smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. You always were a terrible liar, Elena. They stood frozen, the accusation hanging between them unspoken. Finally, Mike moved to the kitchen, pulling out ingredients for dinner. I'm making your favorite, chicken marsala. Elena watched him work, efficient and calm. The same hands that had held her on their wedding day now chopped mushrooms with surgical precision. The same man who'd sworn to protect and serve now hummed softly as he seasoned the meat. Did you do it? The words escaped before she could stop them. Mike paused, not turning around. Do what? Jake, did you set him up? He turned then, meeting her eyes with that same calm expression. Jake Morrison was a drug dealer who stole from the cartel. The evidence was clear. That's not what I asked. Mike wiped his hands on a dish towel, considering his words. What answer would make you feel better, Elena? That your husband is a monster who framed an innocent man? Or that your lover was a criminal who got what he deserved? The word lover hit like a slap. Elena's facade crumbled. You knew. Of course I knew. Mike's voice was conversational, as if discussing the weather. Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, sometimes Saturday mornings, he'd park his taxi car 2 blocks away, like that made him clever. Mike, You were sloppy, Elena, both of you, laughing about the stupid cop who was too noble to notice. Tell me, was it worth it? Were his abs worth watching him waste away in a Guatemalan work camp? Elena was sobbing now, ugly, gasping sounds. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. It just happened and I couldn't. Stop. Mike's voice cut through her apologies. I don't want to hear it. You made your choice. Jake made his. Now everyone lives with the consequences. Lives with? Mike, he's a slave. He's going to die down there. He's alive, which is more than most people who cross the cartel get. He should be grateful. Elena stared at her husband, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time. The dedicated agent. The loving husband. The man capable of condemning another human being to years of slavery for the crime of sleeping with his wife. What happens now? She whispered. Mike returned to cooking, his movements unhurried. Now? Now we have dinner. Tomorrow you'll go to work. I'll go to work. We'll continue being Mr. and Mrs. Ramirez, the respectable couple in the suburbs. I could go to the police, tell them what you did. With what evidence? CCTV footage showing cartel soldiers kidnapping a drug dealer? Evidence from several federal databases? Testimony from the woman he was having an affair with? Mike shook his head. Besides, to do that, you'd have to admit that you slept with him. Publicly. In court. Is that what you want? Elena said nothing. They both knew the answer. I could divorce you, she said finally. You could, but that won't bring Jake back, and it won't stop the cartel from thinking you might know something about their missing money. Right now, being married to a DEA agent is probably the only thing keeping you safe. The trap was perfect. Elena saw it now, saw how thoroughly she'd been caged. Stay and live with the knowledge of what Mike had done. Leave and risk the cartel's vengeance without his protection. You're insane, she breathed. Mike plated the chicken marsala, setting it in front of her with the same care he'd always shown. I'm a man who values loyalty, Elena, in my work, in my marriage. Loyalty is everything. He sat across from her, cutting into his chicken. Eat, it's getting cold. Elena picked up her fork with numb fingers. Across the table, Mike ate with apparent enjoyment, occasionally commenting on the weather or his day at work. As if they were any normal couple. As if Jake Morrison wasn't counting marijuana plants under the Guatemala sun, dreaming of a home he'd never see again. Chapter 11. The Long Game. 6 months after Jake's abduction, a routine had established itself in the Ramirez household. They woke at the same time, shared coffee in silence, went to their respective jobs. To outsiders, they'd weathered a crisis and come out stronger. The neighbors whispered about the scary incident with Elena's trainer, kidnapped by drug dealers, imagine that, but admired how the couple had pulled together. If they noticed that Elena had lost her spark, that her laughter never quite reached her eyes anymore, they attributed it to trauma. If they observed that Mike seemed more watchful, more protective, well, that was natural for a federal agent whose wife had been threatened. Elena had become an expert at living with cognitive dissonance. By day, she cared for patients at Valley Presbyterian, drew blood, started IVs, offered comfort to the sick and scared. By night, she lay beside a man she now knew was capable of anything, wondering if she'd ever sleep soundly again. She'd stopped checking for messages from Jake after the third one arrived. That video had been the worst, Jake begging her to find help, to tell someone, anyone, about Mike's setup. His teeth had been broken, probably from trying to fight back against some perceived injustice. The guards didn't care that he proclaimed his innocence. Everyone in the work camps claimed to be innocent. Mike monitored these communications, of course. He'd installed sophisticated tracking software on all their devices, though he was subtle about it. Elena had figured it out when she tried to research divorce lawyers and found her browser mysteriously crashing every time. The psychological warfare had evolved into something more refined. Mike didn't need threats or violence. He had something far more effective, the truth. I saved a man's life once, he mentioned casually over dinner one evening. Luis Mendoza, Cartel middle management. By all rights, he should have died in county lockup. The Sinaloa boys had already sent 2 teams for him. Elena pushed food around her plate, not responding. But I protected him. Got him into federal custody. Made sure he served his time safely. You know why? She remained silent. Because he had a daughter. Cerebral palsy. She needed her father, even if he was a criminal. So I made a judgment call, bent some rules, kept him alive. Mike sipped his wine thoughtfully. Luis went straight after prison, runs an auto shop now. His daughter's doing better, walking with assistance. All because I decided the system needed a little adjustment. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand something, Elena. The world isn't black and white, good guys, bad guys. It's all a matter of perspective. Jake thought he was a good guy too. A charming coach who helped bored housewives feel desirable again. But he was also a drug dealer, a family destroyer, a man who abused the husband of the woman he was sleeping with. Elena flinched at the crude language. So who's the villain here? Jake for dealing steroids and destroying a marriage? The cartel for punishing a thief? Or me for protecting what's mine? You're not God, Mike. You don't get to decide who deserves punishment. Don't I? Mike leaned back, studying her. Every day at work, I make those decisions. Which dealers to arrest, which to flip, which cases to pursue, which to let slide. The system gave me that power. I just applied it to my personal life. That night, Elena lay awake thinking about Mike's words. The terrifying thing was, she could almost understand his logic. In his world of cartels and violence, of bent cops and brutal justice, maybe his actions made sense. He'd removed a threat, not with a gun or his fists, but with patience and planning. She thought about leaving again. Her sister in Seattle had offered repeatedly to let her stay. But every time Elena started to pack, she'd remember the black Suburban, the throat-cutting gesture, Jake's broken teeth in that last video. Mike had created the perfect prison. Gilded, comfortable, but a prison nonetheless. Chapter 12. The Unraveling. The end began with a simple mistake. Ray Espinoza had been Mike's partner for 6 years. They'd survived shootouts, undercover operations, and endless bureaucracy together. Ray trusted Mike implicitly, which is why he didn't think twice about mentioning the recovery of the Sinaloa money during a casual conversation. They were at their usual lunch spot, a hole-in-the-wall taqueria in Boyle Heights, when Ray brought it up. Remember that missing Sinaloa cash from last year? The $2 million? Mike nodded, taking a bite of his al pastor. Turns out it never went missing. Accounting error on their end. Some idiot counted the same stack twice, reported it stolen when the numbers didn't match. Can you believe that shit? Mike's chewing slowed. When did they figure this out? About a week before that trainer got snatched. That's the thing. Poor bastard got grabbed for nothing. Wrong place, wrong time. Sinaloa was so worked up about the missing money, they started seeing thieves everywhere. Ray continued eating, oblivious to the way Mike's face had gone carefully blank. But hey, not our problem, right? Play stupid games, win stupid prizes. Guy was dealing steroids anyway. Mike forced himself to finish lunch, to laugh at Ray's jokes, to maintain the facade. But inside, his mind was racing. If the money had been recovered before Jake's abduction, if the cartel knew they hadn't actually lost anything. He returned to the office and pulled up the intelligence files. There it was, buried in a supplemental report he'd somehow missed. The Sinaloa cartel had discovered their accounting error 2 days before Jake was taken. They'd quietly closed their internal investigation, which meant Jake hadn't been grabbed because the cartel thought he'd stolen from them. He'd been grabbed because Luis's brothers needed someone who matched the profile Mike had created. A low-level dealer with unexplained wealth and connections to Tijuana. The realization hit Mike like cold water. He'd assumed the cartel investigation would provide cover for Jake's disappearance. Instead, he'd essentially hired kidnappers to abduct an innocent man. Innocent of the theft, anyway. For the first time in months, Mike felt a flutter of uncertainty. Not guilt. He was too far gone for that. But concern about the stability of his carefully constructed narrative. That evening, he found Elena in their bedroom, staring at her laptop screen. Her face was pale, but there was something different in her expression. Not fear, not resignation. Something harder. "Ray stopped by the hospital today," she said without preamble. "Wanted to check on me. Such a sweet man. We had an interesting chat." Mike's hand instinctively moved toward his service weapon before he caught himself. "Oh, he mentioned the Sinaloa money, how it was all a big misunderstanding. Accounting error." Elena's voice was eerily calm. "Funny thing, though. The error was discovered before Jake was taken. Before you showed me all that evidence about him being a thief." She turned the laptop toward him. On the screen was an email composition window, the recipient field showing the FBI's public corruption tip line. "I've been writing this for hours," Elena continued, "trying to get the wording right. How do you explain that your DEA agent husband framed a man for a crime that never happened? That he used cartel connections to have that man kidnapped and enslaved?" Mike read the email quickly. It was rambling, disjointed, but contained enough truth to trigger an investigation. "You won't send it," he said. "Won't I? What's stopping me, Mike? Fear of the cartel? They already took Jake. Fear of you? What are you going to do? Have me disappeared too?" "You're upset. Not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in months." Elena stood, moving away from him. "I loved you once. God help me, part of me still does. But you're a monster, Mike, and someone needs to stop you." Mike considered his options. Violence was out, too messy, too hard to explain. Threats wouldn't work. Elena had moved past fear into something more dangerous. He needed a different approach. "Send it," he said finally. Elena blinked, caught off guard. "What?" "Send the email. See what happens." Mike sat on the bed, his posture relaxed. "FBI will investigate. They'll find a decorated DEA agent with a spotless record. They'll find evidence in federal databases showing Jake Morrison was connected to drug trafficking. They'll find cartel soldiers who kidnapped him on their own initiative. I'll tell them about us, about the affair. A woman scorned trying to blame her husband for her lover's criminal activities? That's your narrative? It's the truth." "Really?" Mike laughed, genuinely amused. "The truth is, you messed with a drug dealer who got himself into a lot of trouble. The truth is, you're trying to pin this on me because you can't live with the guilt. The truth is, no one will believe you, Elena. Not the FBI, not the jury, not anyone." Elena's finger hovered over the send button. Mike watched her, calm, patient. He'd learned that from the cartel, sometimes the most effective threat was no threat at all. "He's suffering because of me," she whispered finally. "He's suffering because of his choices. And yours." Elena closed the laptop without sending the email. They both knew she'd try again, probably soon. And they both knew Mike would be ready. The game had entered its final phase. Chapter 13. The message 2 weeks after Elena's aborted email attempt, Jake Morrison sent his final communication. It arrived via WhatsApp at 3 a.m., the phone's buzz pulling Elena from restless sleep. Mike stirred beside her but didn't wake, or pretended not to. The video was only 30 seconds long. Jake stood in what looked like a crude medical facility, his left arm wrapped in dirty bandages. "Accident with the machete," he explained, his voice hollow. "Infection set in. They say they might have to take the arm." He looked directly at the camera, and for the first time in months there was clarity in his eyes. Not hope. That had died long ago. But understanding. "Tell that psycho husband of yours he wins. They're moving me deeper south tomorrow. No more phones where I'm going. No more contact with the outside world." Jake paused, swaying slightly. "Fever, probably, from the infection." "I'm sorry, Elena. For everything. We should have just gotten divorced like normal people. Would have been cleaner, honest, instead." He gestured weakly at his surroundings. 5 years, they say. If I survive. If I meet quota. If I don't cause trouble. Funny thing is, I don't even blame them anymore. The cartel guys, they're just doing what they do. But Mike, what kind of man does that to another human being over pussy? The video ended abruptly, cutting to black. Elena stared at the screen, Jake's final words echoing in the darkness. She felt Mike shift beside her, knew he was awake now, waiting for her reaction. He's dying, she said quietly. Infections are common in those conditions, Mike replied, his voice neutral. Poor medical care, tropical diseases, workplace accidents. The survival rate isn't great. Are you happy now? Mike turned on the bedside lamp, studying her face in the soft light. Happy? No. Satisfied? Perhaps. Justice isn't about happiness, Elena. It's about balance. He took something from me. Now he's paying for it. With his life. With 5 years of his life. If he's strong enough. If he's smart enough. The ancient Romans used to send criminals to the mines. Same concept. Labor as penance. Elena felt something break inside her. Not her spirit. That had shattered months ago. But whatever thin thread had still connected her to the man she'd married. I can't do this anymore, she said. Do what? Live with you? Live this lie. Pretend we're a normal couple when I know what you're capable of. Mike sighed, running a hand through his hair. And what's your alternative? Divorce? I won't stop you. But think carefully, Elena. Right now, you're the DEA agent's wife who survived a cartel threat. Divorce me and you become the woman who cheated with a drug dealer. The woman who might know things. The woman without protection. Maybe I don't care anymore. Don't you? Mike reached for his phone, pulling up a news article. 3 bodies found in Riverside last week. Former associates of the Sinaloa cartel. They'd been hiding for 2 years, thought they were safe. The cartel has a long memory, Elena, and they don't forgive debts. The threat was implicit but clear. Without Mike's protection, Elena would be vulnerable. The cartel might have moved on, but if they ever learned the truth about Jake's framing... You've thought of everything, haven't you? Elena's voice was bitter. It's what I do. Strategic thinking, risk assessment, threat neutralization. Is that what I am to you now? A threat to be neutralized? Mike considered this. You're my wife. The woman I loved enough to marry. The woman who betrayed me. The woman who now understands the consequences of that betrayal. What you are to me depends entirely on what you choose to do next. Elena stood, wrapping her robe around herself. I need some air. She walked to the back patio, the cool night air a relief after the suffocating tension of the bedroom. The stars were hidden by LA's light pollution, the sky a dull orange glow. Behind her, she heard Mike moving around the house. Not following, just present. Always watching. Always ready. Elena thought about Jake, somewhere in the mountains of Guatemala, possibly dying from an infected wound. She thought about the life they'd shared. Shallow, yes, built on deception, but real in its own way. The laughter, the passion, the simple joy of feeling desired again. And she thought about Mike, the man she'd married, the man who'd sworn to protect and serve, the man who'd orchestrated a kidnapping as casually as he'd planned a dinner party. There were no good choices left, only degrees of survival. Chapter 14. The Reckoning. 1 year after Jake Morrison's abduction, Elena Ramirez stood in her kitchen, preparing dinner with mechanical precision. She'd become an expert at going through the motions: work, home, sleep, repeat. Her coworkers had stopped asking if she was okay. Her family had accepted her explanations about stress and middle-age mellowing. Even Mike seemed to have relaxed his vigilance, trusting in the perfection of his trap. Which is why he didn't notice the small changes at first. Elena had started volunteering at a free clinic in Boyle Heights, treating undocumented immigrants who couldn't afford regular health care. She'd told Mike it was about giving back, finding purpose after their trauma. He'd approved, seeing it as a sign she was moving on. What he didn't know was that the clinic was 3 blocks from Luis Mendoza's auto shop. It took Elena 2 months to work up the courage to approach Luis. She'd seen him occasionally, bringing his daughter Maria for checkups. The girl was doing better, walking with braces now, her smile bright despite her challenges. "You're Mike's wife," Luis said, when Elena finally introduced herself properly. It wasn't a question. "Yes." Luis studied her face, reading something there that made his expression soften slightly. "What do you want, say, Aura?" "The truth," Elena said simply. "About what my husband asked you to do." They sat in Luis's office, the same room where Mike had made his devil's bargain. Elena listened as Luis explained, his voice careful, choosing each word. "Your husband saved my life once. I owed him a debt. When he came to me..." Luis shrugged. "I made a call. My brothers handled the rest." "Where is Jake Morrison now?" "You don't want to know that." "I do. I need to." Luis was quiet for a long moment. "Last I heard, he was moved to a farm near Cobb Inn. The Highlands. It's not a good place, eh? Aura. Men go there to disappear." "Is he alive?" "As of 3 months ago, yes. But the conditions..." Luis shook his head. "Why do you want to know this?" Elena met his eyes. "Because I'm responsible. Because my husband is a monster. And because someone needs to know the truth." "The truth?" Luis laughed bitterly. "The truth is dangerous, say, Aura. The truth gets people killed." "I'm already dead," Elena said quietly. "I've been dead since the night your brothers took Jake. I just haven't stopped breathing yet." Luis studied her for a long moment, then made a decision. He pulled out a burner phone, dialed a number from memory. "Carlos, it's Luis. I need information about a worker. Morrison, the American." He listened, nodding. "I see. Yes, I understand." He hung up, his face grave. "He's alive. Sick, weak, but alive. Carlos says he's changed. Broken. Most men don't last a year in those conditions. Your boyfriend has lasted longer, but can you get him out?" The question hung in the air between them. Luis's face was stone. "That's not possible." "What if I paid? I have money saved." "It's not about money, say Ore. My brothers took him on my word. To release him would be to admit a mistake. To show weakness. In their world, that's death." Elena felt the last hope die. "So he rots there forever because my husband wanted revenge." "He rots there because he made choices," Luis corrected. "We all make choices. Your husband, you, me, the American. Now we live with them." Elena stood to leave, then paused. "Does it ever end? The guilt?" Luis looked at his daughter's picture on the desk. "No, but you learn to carry it, like a stone in your shoe. Eventually you forget it's there. Most days." Elena returned home to find Mike already there cooking dinner. He smiled when she entered, the perfect husband. "How was the clinic?" "Good. Busy." She washed her hands, going through the motions. "I saw Luis Mendoza there. His daughter's doing better." Mike's stirring paused for just a moment. "That's nice. Good to hear she's improving." They ate in silence, the weight of unspoken truths heavy between them. Elena thought about Jake, broken and forgotten in the Guatemalan highlands. About Luis, carrying his own guilt like a stone. About Mike, calmly eating his salmon as if he hadn't destroyed a man's life over wounded pride. "I know you went to see Luis," Mike said casually, reaching for the salt. "Not at the clinic, at his shop." Elena's blood froze. Of course he knew. Mike always knew. "I needed to understand," she said. "And do you?" "Understand?" Elena met his eyes. "Yes, I understand that you're exactly the monster I thought you were." Mike nodded, seemingly satisfied. Good. Understanding is important in a marriage. This isn't a marriage. It's a hostage situation. Most marriages are in one way or another. Mike sipped his wine thoughtfully. The only difference is that we're honest about it. That night, Elena made a decision. Not to run, she'd accepted that was impossible. Not to expose Mike, that would only destroy more lives. But to survive. To endure. To carry her guilt like Luis carried his, like a stone in her shoe. And maybe, someday, to forget it was there. Most days. Epilogue. 5 years later. The package arrived on a Tuesday morning, addressed to Elena in shaky handwriting. No return address, but the Guatemalan postmark told her everything she needed to know. Mike was at work. He'd made captain now, heading his own task force. Their marriage had settled into a cold detente. Separate bedrooms, polite conversation, the appearance of normalcy for the outside world. Elena opened the package carefully. Inside was a single photograph and a letter. The photo showed Jake Morrison, or what was left of him. Gaunt, aged beyond his years, missing his left arm below the elbow. But alive. Standing in what looked like a bus station, a small bag at his feet. The letter was brief. Elena, they kept their word. 5 years. I'm free. I'm not coming back. There's nothing for me there. I hope you got free too, in your own way. Don't look for me. Let the dead stay dead. J. Elena burned both the letter and the photo in the kitchen sink, washing the ashes down the drain. When Mike came home that night, she was making dinner as usual. Anything interesting happen today? He asked, his standard question. Always probing, always watching. No, Elena replied. Just another ordinary day. Mike studied her face, perhaps sensing something different. But after a moment, he simply nodded. They ate in silence, two people who'd destroyed each other so thoroughly that only the shells remained. Outside, Los Angeles glittered in the darkness, millions of people living their lives, making their choices, carrying their stones. In the Guatemalan highlands, a one-armed man boarded a bus heading south, leaving his past behind. He'd learned Spanish during his captivity, taken a new name, built a new identity from the ashes of Jake Morrison. In Boyle Heights, Luis Mendoza tucked his daughter into bed, her laughter bright as ever. The stone in his shoe barely noticeable anymore. And in Woodland Hills, Mike and Elena Ramirez cleared the dinner dishes, each lost in their own thoughts. The perfect suburban couple, harboring perfect suburban secrets. The Cartel connection had bound them all, victim and perpetrator, saint and sinner, the living and the living dead. None of them had escaped unscathed. But they endured, because that's what people do. They make choices. They pay prices. They carry stones. And sometimes, if they're very lucky or very strong, they learn to walk despite the weight. Most days. The end.